4.7 million years ago, your ancestor, a small, defenseless creature named Ardipithecus, woke up in East Africa to a mathematical certainty 6 out of every 100 of her kind would be killed and eaten. Not, maybe, would be. She couldn't run fast. Her teeth couldn't pierce an apple. Her claws, she didn't have any. In a world of saber-toothed killers and 10-foot crocodiles, she was basically a walking happy meal. She should have gone extinct in about 3 days. But here's the thing, you're watching this video, which means she didn't just survive. She did something so impossible, so revolutionary, that it changed the entire planet forever. Tonight, you're going to discover how the weakest, slowest, most pathetic creature in prehistoric Africa outsmarted death itself. How your ancestors turned being pathetic into being powerful. How they faced killers that would make your worst nightmares wet themselves. And won. Because 4.7 million years ago, something happened that shouldn't have been possible. And every single human alive today is the proof. Close your eyes. It's 4.7 million years ago. You're standing in what will become Ethiopia, but nothing looks familiar. The ground beneath your feet trembles, not from a passing truck, but from the earth literally tearing itself apart. A volcanic peak that wasn't there yesterday is already 300 feet tall and growing. Welcome to the day that changed everything. The air tastes of sulfur and rain. Lightning strikes every few seconds, but this isn't a normal storm. It's the atmosphere going haywire as the East African Rift Valley rips the continent in two, where your descendants will one day find Lucy and Ardy. Right now there's just chaos, opportunity, and death fighting for dominance. In the trees something watches. Not quite ape, not quite human. Ardipithecus ramidus, though she doesn't know that name. She knows only that the world she was born into is ending. The dense forests where her mother's mother's mother lived for millions of years are dying. In their place, something terrifying spreads. Grassland, open space, nowhere to hide. She clutches her infant tighter. The baby doesn't cry. Those who cry don't survive long here. Natural selection has already begun sculpting silence into survival. Below her tree, a saber-toothed cat passes, following the scent of something dying in the distance. It ignores her, today. But here's what makes this moment special. She doesn't run deeper into the dying forest like her cousins will. She looks at the grassland and sees possibility. Her feet, still grasping with that opposable big toe, are already changing. Her spine, more upright than her mother's, lets her see over tall grass. Her smaller teeth mean she doesn't need to fight for mates. She can cooperate instead. She is the first glimpse of us. The earthquake stops. The volcano continues its birth. And in this moment of planetary violence, something extraordinary happens. She climbs down from her tree and takes a step into the open grassland. Then another. Walking upright, carrying her child, exposed and vulnerable but moving forward. Anyway, this is the day everything changed. Not because of the splitting earth or dying forests, but because one small, weak primate decided that adaptation was better than extinction, that cooperation might beat competition, that walking into danger was better than hiding from change. 4.7 million years later, you exist because she took that step, because she looked at an impossible situation and chose to become impossible herself. Every human who ever lived owes their existence to this moment when our ancestors chose courage over comfort, change over changelessness. The day everything changed wasn't marked by monuments or witnessed by crowds. It was just a small figure walking upright across dangerous ground, proving that sometimes the weakest ones change the world. The crack started small, a hairline fracture in the Earth's crust, barely visible, but by 4.7 million years ago, It had become a continental catastrophe that would shape human evolution. The East African Rift Valley wasn't just changing geography, it was creating the pressure cooker that would forge humanity. Imagine the ground beneath you splitting at 1 inch per year. Sounds slow. That's 83 feet per human lifetime. Entire territories that families had used for generations suddenly became impassable chasms. Rivers changed course overnight. Lakes appeared where none existed, then vanished in decades. This wasn't stable ground. It was planetary surgery without anesthesia. Dr. Cynthia Ebinger, studying modern rift activity, discovered something chilling. The rifting process creates chains of volcanoes, earthquakes measuring 7.0 or higher, and toxic gas emissions that can kill everything within miles. Now imagine living through this for millions of years. The Rift Valley became evolution's laboratory. On one side, dense forests clung to existence. On the other, grasslands spread like golden death, beautiful but offering nowhere to hide. Our ancestors found themselves trapped between worlds, forced to master both or perish. But the rift gave as much as it took. Volcanic soil created nutrient-rich patches that attracted prey animals. Fresh water springs emerged from fractured rock. Caves and cliffs provided shelter. The diversity of environments within walking distance meant that when one food source failed, another might thrive just over the ridge. The splitting created what scientists call habitat fragmentation, isolated pockets where small populations evolved rapidly, like Darwin's finches on steroids. Groups separated by just miles might develop different survival strategies, different tools, different ways of walking. The rift was running multiple evolutionary experiments simultaneously. Here's the kicker. This geographic violence created the selection pressure for bigger brains. When your homeland constantly changes, memorizing specific locations becomes useless. You need abstract thinking, the ability to recognize patterns, predict changes, adapt strategies. The rift wasn't just splitting Africa, it was splitting our ancestors' minds wide open. Ardipithecus ramidus lived right at the epicenter. Their fossils cluster along ancient rift margins in sediments laid down by volcanic floods. They weren't just witnesses to planetary change, they were its children. Every adaptation, from upright walking to cooperative breeding, was a response to living on unstable ground. The archaeological evidence is sobering. Fossil sites show rapid species turnover, animals appearing and vanishing within thousands of years. Except for one lineage that learned to treat instability as normal, that learned to walk upright to see danger coming, that learned to cooperate because solo survival was impossible. Today, satellites measure the rift still spreading. In 10 million years, East Africa will be an island. The process that created us continues, indifferent to its greatest creation. But 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors stood at ground zero of this planetary wound and did something remarkable. They refused to break. Let me tell you about the most beautiful nightmare ever created. East Africa, 4.7 million years ago, was a paradise that wanted you dead. Every sunrise revealed landscapes so stunning they'd make National Geographic weep, and so lethal that 6 out of every 100 individuals became predator food. Picture this. Crystal clear crater lakes, reflecting snow-capped volcanoes, gallery forests where sunlight filtered through canopies creating cathedral light, golden grasslands rippling like seas of honey. It looked like Eden, it hunted like hell. In those beautiful lakes, crocodiles with skulls 10 feet long, not modern crocs that mostly eat fish, these were active hunters that could gallop on land. One fossil skull shows bite marks on an early hominin child. The paradise had teeth, and they were always hungry. The trees that looked so safe. African crowned eagles nested there, raptors with 7-foot wingspans and talons designed for piercing primate skulls. They could carry off a 30-pound child. We know because we found the bones. Tiny skulls with distinctive talon punctures. Death came from above on silent wings. The grasslands that waved so peacefully. Saber-toothed cats used them as killing fields. Dinophilus, the terrible cat, specialized in hunting primates. Its fossils concentrate around hominin sites. Coincidence? The tooth marks on ancient human ancestor bones say otherwise. But here's what's remarkable. Our ancestors chose this paradise anyway. They could have stayed in the deep forests like their cousins who became chimps. Safe, stable, boring forests where nothing much changed for millions of years. Instead, Ardipithecus ramidus chose the edge zones, those dangerous transitions between forest and grassland, where death rates soared but opportunities exploded. Why? Because paradise with teeth taught lessons you couldn't learn in safety. Every day survived was a masterclass in observation. Which birds going quiet meant leopard. Which rustling pattern meant snake versus wind. Which water sources attracted predators at dawn versus dusk. The fossil record shows something extraordinary. While forest apes remained largely unchanged, our edge-dwelling ancestors evolved rapidly, not just physically, behaviorally. They developed sentinel behavior, where some watched while others foraged. They created vocal signals that could communicate snake versus eagle versus cat. They learned to read the landscape like a book written in blood and survival. The paradise even trained their bodies. That weird combination of tree-climbing feet and upright walking. Perfect for edge environments. Climb to safety, walk to opportunity, those smaller teeth. In a world where cooperation mattered more than competition, you didn't need fangs. You needed friends. Every beautiful vista hid a deadly lesson. Those crater lakes taught them seasonal patterns. When flamingos arrived, rains followed. Those golden grasslands taught them fire. Natural burns that cleared land and concentrated prey. Those gallery forests taught them highways, safe corridors through dangerous territory. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors lived in Earth's most beautiful slaughterhouse. And instead of fleeing, they learned its rules, mastered its patterns, and turned paradise with teeth into humanity's first university. The diploma? Survival. The graduation rate? 6% became dinner. The survivors? They became us. Imagine waking up one morning to find winter has been cancelled. Not delayed. Cancelled for the next 1,000 years. Then, just when you've adapted to permanent summer, ice storms arrive that last centuries. Welcome to the Pliocene climate, Earth's bipolar episode that created humanity. 4.7 million years ago, the planet couldn't make up its mind. Global temperatures swung 5 to 6 degrees Celsius like a thermostat controlled by a toddler. The Pliocene warm period had temperatures 2 to 3 degrees Celsius higher than today. Palm trees grew in Antarctica. Crocodiles swam in the Arctic. Then came crashes so severe that ice sheets reached the Mediterranean. For our ancestors in East Africa, this meant their entire world could transform within a single lifetime. Dr. Peter Domenical's deep sea cores reveal the terrifying truth. Climate shifted on 40,000-year cycles, but with variations lasting just centuries. Imagine your grandparents' stories about endless forests, but you're standing in desert. The numbers are staggering. Lake Turkana, today's massive desert lake, was 550 meters deeper, and it vanished entirely, multiple times. The Sahara, yes, that Sahara, was green savanna teeming with hippos, then sand, then green again. This wasn't gradual change measured in millions of years. This was climate having a nervous breakdown. Ardipithecus ramidus lived through humidity that would make the Amazon jealous, followed by droughts that killed everything without deep roots. Seasonal rains that arrived like clockwork for centuries suddenly stopped for decades. Rivers that great-grandmothers swore were eternal became dust within one generation. Here's what this insanity created: the world's first behavioral innovators. When you can't rely on environment, you rely on intelligence. When traditional food sources vanish, you experiment or expire. When your childhood climate doesn't match your adulthood, you learn that change is the only constant. The fossil record shows extraordinary dietary flexibility. Tooth isotopes reveal our ancestors eating C3 plants, forest foods, and C4 plants, grassland foods, within the same population. Not different species. Same group, different meals. They were the ultimate omnivores because climate gave them no choice. But the real innovation was social. Unstable climate meant unstable resources. The only buffer against starvation was sharing. If I feed you during my good season, you feed me during yours. Cooperation became climate insurance. Those who hoarded died alone. Those who shared survived together. The climate insanity also triggered migrations. When your homeland becomes uninhabitable, you walk or die. Ardipithecus populations spread across Africa, not from wanderlust, but from necessity. Each migration meant learning new territories, new dangers, new opportunities. Geographic knowledge became survival currency. Perhaps most remarkably, this climate chaos created generalists. While other species specialized for specific environments and went extinct when those environments vanished, our ancestors learned to survive anywhere. Forest, we can do that. Grassland, no problem. Lake edge, mountain slope, volcanic hellscape, bring it on. Modern humans complain when seasons arrive late. Our ancestors survived seasons that didn't arrive for centuries. We panic over 1-degree temperature changes. They adapted to 6-degree swings. We have climate anxiety. They had climate reality. The climate that went insane didn't break our ancestors. It built them. Every swing taught flexibility. Every crash taught cooperation. Every unpredictable change taught innovation. 4.7 million years ago, the climate went crazy. Our ancestors went creative. Guess which strategy won? The ground glowed red at night. Not metaphorically, literally glowed from lava tubes running beneath the surface like Earth's visible veins. The Afar Triangle, 4.7 million years ago, was where 3 tectonic plates met to throw the planet's most violent party. And our ancestors didn't just survive here, they thrived. Every few years, a new volcano would birth itself. The lucky ones got weeks of warning: earthquakes, steam vents, the ground bulging like a geological tumor. The unlucky ones woke to their water source becoming a lava lake overnight. Yet Ardipithecus ramidus fossils concentrate exactly here, in Earth's most volcanically active region. Why? Because volcanic hell was also nutritional heaven. Fresh volcanic soil contains every mineral life needs: phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium. Plants growing in volcanic soil produce more nutrients, grow faster, fruit heavier. Animals eating these plants grow larger, reproduce faster. The entire food chain supercharges on volcanic minerals. Hell's Garden was Earth's most productive ecosystem. Dr. Celia Nyamweru, studying modern African volcanoes, discovered something stunning. Within 5 years of an eruption, volcanic slopes support 10 times the biomass of normal soil. It's devastation followed by abundance on steroids. But living in paradise required dancing with the devil. Volcanic gases could kill silently, carbon dioxide pooling in valleys at night, suffocating everything sleeping low. Fluorine in volcanic ash poisoned water sources. Pyroclastic flows moved at 450 miles per hour, incinerating everything in their path. This wasn't occasional danger. This was daily Russian roulette. Our ancestors developed an intimate knowledge of volcanic behavior that modern volcanologists would envy. They knew which earthquakes meant evacuate now versus just the planet stretching. They recognized which steam meant water versus which meant death. They could read volcanic mood swings like facial expressions. The archaeological evidence is mind-blowing. Fossil sites show repeated occupation of the same locations despite multiple volcanic deposits. They weren't fleeing volcanoes. They were following them. After each eruption, they'd return to harvest the bounty that followed. They were disaster capitalists before capitalism existed. Living with volcanoes taught crucial lessons. Sudden evacuation meant only portable possessions mattered. Skills over stuff. Unpredictable destruction meant flexible social structures. No rigid hierarchies that collapse when leaders die. Rapid landscape change meant mental mapping abilities, remembering multiple versions of the same territory. The volcanic environment also created natural experiments in isolation. Lava flows would separate populations for generations, creating genetic and cultural diversity. When flows cooled and groups reunited, they brought different innovations, different solutions to shared problems. Volcanoes were accidentally running evolution's research and development department. But here's the kicker. Volcanic regions created the raw materials for humanity's future. Obsidian for cutting tools sharper than surgical steel. Pumice for grinding, mineral springs for healing, clay for eventual pottery. The same forces trying to kill our ancestors were providing the materials for their descendants' technologies. One Ardipithecus fossil was found in volcanic tuff, ash that fell directly on the body, preserving it perfectly. This individual died in an eruption, but gave us unprecedented knowledge about our origins. Even in death, the volcanic hell provided gifts. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors made a choice that defined humanity. When the world explodes, don't run away. Run toward the explosion's aftermath. Where others saw death, they saw opportunity. Where others fled devastation, they planted seeds. Volcanic hell was Earth's forge, and we were the metal being shaped. Every eruption that didn't kill us made us stronger, smarter, more adaptable. The Garden of Eden had lava, and we learned to love the burn. In 2009, after 15 years of secretive analysis, scientists unveiled something that broke every rule of human evolution. Ardipithecus ramidus, wasn't supposed to exist. She was evolution's paradox, a creature that challenged everything we thought we knew about our origins. Here's why she was impossible. She walked upright, but had grasping feet. She lived on the ground, but retained tree-climbing abilities. She had a small brain, but complex social behaviors. She was weak, but survived where stronger species died. Every anatomy textbook said she couldn't work, yet there she was, 4.4 million years old, and laughing at our theories. Dr. Tim White, who led the discovery team, couldn't hide his shock. We expected to find something between humans and chimps. Instead, we found something that was neither, something entirely unique. Ardi rewrote the textbook before we could finish reading it. Let's talk about those feet. Modern apes have feet like hands, great for gripping branches, useless for walking. Humans have rigid feet, perfect for walking, terrible for climbing. Ardi? She had both. An opposable big toe for gripping, but a rigid midfoot for walking. It's like having wheels and wings on the same vehicle. Shouldn't work. Did anyway. Her pelvis was even stranger. Lower pelvis shaped for upright walking, upper pelvis designed for climbing. The engineering made scientists' heads explode. It's like finding a car that's simultaneously a boat, and both functions work perfectly, Evolution doesn't usually create Swiss Army knives. It creates specialists. RD was evolution's rebellion against its own rules, but the real impossibility was her hands. No knuckle-walking adaptations like chimps and gorillas. None. This shattered the fundamental assumption that humans evolved from knuckle-walking apes. RD never knuckle-walked. Her ancestors never knuckle-walked. We didn't rise from all fours. We never were on all fours to begin with. Her skull housed a brain of 300 to 350 cubic centimeters. Chimp-sized. Yet archaeological evidence suggests complex social behaviors that shouldn't be possible with that brain size. Tool use without the brain for tools. Social cooperation without the neural real estate for society. She was running sophisticated software on primitive hardware. The environmental evidence made her even more impossible. She lived in woodlands, not open savanna, where upright walking supposedly evolved. She ate forest foods but had teeth adapted for diverse diets. She avoided conflict but lived surrounded by predators. Every adaptation contradicted its context. Here's what RD proved. Evolution isn't a ladder from primitive to advanced. It's a drunken dance of experiments, most failing, some succeeding against all odds. RD was the experiment that shouldn't have succeeded but did. For over 1 million years, scientists spent 15 years trying to make RD make sense. She never did, she just was. A creature built from evolutionary contradictions who survived by being impossible, walking when she should climb, cooperating when she should compete, thriving when she should die. 4.7 million years ago, the impossible became inevitable because RD existed. And so do we. The first step upright was the step that separated us from every other ape forever. But here's the shocking truth. Our ancestors didn't stand up to use tools, or to see over grass, or to free their hands. They stood up for love. Dr. Owen Lovejoy's revolutionary research revealed the real reason. Bipedalism evolved as part of a reproductive strategy. Males who could walk upright could carry food to females and offspring. It was about provisioning, not prowess. Think about that. The defining characteristic of humanity, upright walking, evolved because some male 4.7 million years ago figured out that bringing breakfast in bed beat chest thumping for mates. Romance reshaped our skeleton. But standing up was almost a death sentence. Upright walking made our ancestors slower, more visible, and vulnerable from every angle. A quadrupedal chimp can outrun a bipedal human any day. Standing meant sacrificing speed for what exactly? Everything. Standing up freed the hands completely, not just to carry food, but to carry infants. Ape babies cling to their mother's fur. Human babies can't cling to anything. They must be carried. Bipedalism allowed mothers to transport helpless infants while still gathering food. It turned a liability into mobility. The spine tells the story of this transformation. Ardipithecus had an S-curved spine, not the C-curve of apes. This S-curve was engineering genius, distributing weight over the pelvis, creating shock absorption for walking. But it came with a price. Lower back pain. Every human with back problems is paying the price for standing up 4.7 million years ago. Standing changed how we breathed. Apes breathe in rhythm with their walking, 1 breath per stride. Humans can breathe independently of movement. This meant our ancestors could control breathing for something else. Complex vocalization. Standing up gave us the mechanical foundation for speech. The pelvis transformation was brutal on females. Narrower hips for efficient walking meant smaller birth canals. Babies had to be born earlier, more helpless, requiring more care. Standing up created the obstetrical dilemma that still kills mothers in childbirth. Evolution demanded a terrible trade. Walk or reproduce easily. Our ancestors chose walking. But the benefits were staggering. Standing meant seeing predators sooner. It meant less body surface exposed to midday sun. It meant appearing larger to threats. It meant carrying tools, food, and babies simultaneously. It meant gesturing with hands while moving. It meant becoming human. The archaeological record shows the transition wasn't instant. Ardipithecus could walk upright, but retained climbing abilities. They hedged their evolutionary bets, keeping options open. Smart move in a world where trees meant safety and ground meant opportunity. Energy efficiency sealed the deal. Walking upright uses 75% less energy than knuckle walking. Over a lifetime of daily travel, that's millions of calories saved. Calories that could go to bigger brains, longer childhoods, more offspring. Standing up was the first domino. Everything else, tools, language, culture, civilization, followed from that first upright step. One small step for an ape, one giant leap for apekind. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors stood up. The universe would never be the same. Here's the paradox that shouldn't exist. Ardipithecus ramidus had a brain barely larger than a chimp's, 300 to 350 cubic centimeters, yet displayed social behaviors that would challenge modern apes with twice the neural capacity. They were running quantum computers on vacuum tubes. Dr. Dean Falk, studying endocasts of early hominin skulls, discovered something remarkable. It wasn't brain size that mattered, it was brain reorganization. They were rewiring the circuits while keeping the same hardware. The numbers are humbling. Modern humans, 1,350 cubic centimeter brains. Ardipithecus, 325 cubic centimeters. We have 4 times more brain, yet they'd already figured out cooperation, pair bonding, and complex social structures. They were doing calculus with an abacus. So how did they outsmart muscle with such tiny brains? They cheated. Instead of growing expensive brain tissue that requires massive calories, they developed external brains. Culture, information stored in traditions, passed between generations, accumulated without genetic change. They invented the cloud storage of consciousness. The fossil evidence shows something extraordinary. While contemporary apes used the same tools for millions of years, Ardipithecus populations showed regional variations. Different groups developed different solutions to similar problems. This wasn't genetic evolution, it was cultural evolution, and it was faster than biology. Their small brains forced efficiency. Modern humans use 20% of our calories for brain function. Ardipithecus couldn't afford that luxury. They had to be selective, so they specialized in what mattered most. Social intelligence, reading group dynamics, remembering relationships, predicting behaviors, the stuff that keeps you alive when you're weak. Here's what they figured out. In a group of 30 individuals, there are 435 possible relationships to track. Who's allied with whom? Who owes favors? Who holds grudges? Ardipithecus brains became specialized social computers, trading raw processing power for relationship RAM. The neurological evidence is indirect but compelling. Reduced sexual dimorphism meant less male competition, which meant more energy for cooperation rather than conflict. Their brains didn't need circuits for managing aggression. They could repurpose that neural real estate for collaboration. They also discovered the ultimate brain hack: borrowing others' brains. Why remember everything yourself when you can distribute knowledge across the group? One remembers water sources, another remembers predator patterns, another remembers seasonal foods. The group brain was bigger than any individual brain. This small brain strategy had unexpected benefits. Smaller brains meant shorter gestation, easier birth, faster maturation, while big brain species struggled with reproduction. Ardipithecus could pop out babies relatively quickly, each one carrying the cultural software of the group. The small brain also forced innovation in communication. Without capacity for storing vast vocabularies, they developed rich, non-verbal communication. Gestures, expressions, postures. I embodied language that conveyed complex information without words. They were doing more, with less. Perhaps most remarkably, their small brains taught them humility. They couldn't outthink problems individually, so they had to out-cooperate them collectively. Every challenge required group solutions. Every innovation needed social validation. Every survival decision was crowdsourced. Modern humans pride themselves on big brains, but Ardipithecus proved that brain size is vanity. What matters is how you use what you have. They took a chimp-sized brain and rewired it for cooperation, culture, and community. 4.7 million years ago, evolution ran an experiment. Could intelligence emerge from networking rather than raw neural power? The answer changed the world. Small brain, big impact. That's the power of thinking together. The most revolutionary moment in human evolution wasn't when we picked up tools or controlled fire. It was when males stopped beating the hell out of each other for mates. This happened 4.7 million years ago, and it changed absolutely everything. Look at male gorillas. 400 pounds of muscle and rage with canine teeth like daggers. Male chimps, smaller but violent, forming coalitions to murder rivals. Then look at Ardipithecus males, virtually the same size as females, with tiny canines that couldn't intimidate a rabbit. What happened? Love happened. Or more accurately, a revolution in reproductive strategy that favored providers over fighters. Dr. Owen Lovejoy calls it the grand bargain of human evolution. Males gave up fighting for exclusive mating rights. In exchange, they got something better, a partner who would preferentially mate with them if they helped raise the kids. Monogamy-ish beat polygamy. Cooperation crushed competition. The teeth tell the story. Those massive canines are their sport. They're 90% for intimidating other males, 10% for actual biting. Ardipithecus males had canines barely larger than females. They'd literally disarmed. It's like every male agreeing to gun control simultaneously. The arms race ended because everyone laid down arms. But why would evolution favor weaker males? Because in the harsh world of 4.7 million years ago, two parents barely kept offspring alive. Single mothers? Forget it. Infants needed constant carrying, intensive feeding, protection from predators. Males who stuck around had more surviving offspring than males who fought, won, mated, and left. The skeletal evidence is shocking. Male Ardipithecus were maybe 20% larger than females. Male chimps, 30 to 40% larger. Male gorillas, 100% larger. This size reduction didn't happen gradually. It was an evolutionary crash. Diet. Fighting became so disadvantageous that big males actually had fewer offspring. Here's what this meant for daily life. Male energy previously wasted on growing huge muscles, and fighting could go toward finding food, protecting offspring, and maintaining relationships. It's like converting military spending to education and healthcare. The social dividend was massive. The psychological revolution was even bigger. Reduced testosterone meant reduced aggression, but also enhanced cooperation, communication, and caregiving. Male brains, freed from constant competition calculations, could develop emotional intelligence. Empathy became evolutionarily advantageous. This created a cascade effect. Less male competition meant more stable groups. Stable groups meant accumulated knowledge. Knowledge accumulation meant cultural evolution. Cultural evolution meant survival advantages that dwarf any physical strength. The pair bonding that resulted wasn't strict monogamy, more like social monogamy with flexibility. Males invested primarily in one female's offspring while maintaining group cohesion. It was the birth of the family unit, but embedded in community structure. Archaeological evidence suggests this transformation was complete by Ardipithecus times. No evidence of male-male combat injuries that characterize other ape fossils. No sexual dimorphism in wounds. No gender-segregated activities. Males and females were partners, not competitors. Modern men struggling with toxic masculinity are fighting ghosts of a primate past we abandoned 4.7 million years ago. Aggression, dominance, competition. These aren't human nature. They're evolutionary baggage we've been trying to lose since Ardipithecus. The revolution succeeded because everybody won. Females got help raising offspring. Males got reproductive certainty. Offspring got two parents. Groups got stability. When males stopped fighting, humanity started flourishing. Best peace treaty ever. Signed. You want to understand human evolution. Look at teeth. Not skulls, not tools. Teeth. Because 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors' teeth declared independence from the entire primate playbook, and that rebellion made us human. Dr. Gensua spent 15 years analyzing Ardipithecus teeth, and his conclusion was revolutionary. These teeth tell a story of complete behavioral transformation. It's like finding a lion with molars designed for eating salad. Let's start with those canines, or rather, their shocking absence. Male apes have canines like daggers, constantly sharpened by grinding against lower teeth. They're weapons and warnings, saying, "I will mess you up," without opening their mouths. Ardipithecus males. Their canines were diamonds, small, symmetrical, and absolutely useless for fighting. This wasn't just dental downsizing. This was evolutionary disarmament. Every generation, slightly smaller canines meant slightly better survival. Natural selection was actively punishing aggression. In a world full of saber-toothed predators, our ancestors gave up their sabers. That takes evolutionary balls. But the molars tell an even stranger story. Thin enamel, like fruit-eating apes, but worn in patterns suggesting diverse diets. These teeth were processing foods that shouldn't go together. Soft fruits and hard seeds, leaves and insects, everything and anything. They were omnivore teeth before omnivory was cool. The wear patterns are fascinating. Modern apes show consistent wear. Chimps from fruit, gorillas from leaves. Ardipithecus teeth look like they went through a blender. Every individual shows different patterns. They were dietary experimenters, each one a walking food lab, testing what was edible. Here's the kicker. The tooth rows were already shrinking. The dental arcade was becoming more curved, less straight. This seems minor, but it's huge. Smaller tooth rows mean weaker bites, but leave room for something else. A larger tongue space. A tongue that would eventually need room for speech. The first premolar is the smoking gun. In apes, it's sectorial, sharp, slicing part of the canine complex. In Ardipithecus, it's already shifting toward grinding. They were literally choosing food processing over food fighting. Every meal was a vote for cooperation over competition. Microscopic analysis reveals another revolution. These teeth were processing cooked food, not with fire, that's millions of years away, but with deliberate preparation, grinding, mashing, fermenting. They were external food processing, making calories more available without genetic change. Cultural cuisine before culture existed. The tooth timing tells us about childhood. Ardipithecus teeth erupted on a schedule between apes and humans. Childhood was already extending. Longer childhood meant more learning time, more dependency, more need for cooperative child rearing. The teeth were forcing social revolution, but perhaps most remarkably, These teeth showed no sexual dimorphism in where males and females were eating the same foods, foraging in the same places. This wasn't the segregated dining of other apes. This was family dinner. 4.7 million years ago, tooth isotopes confirmed dietary flexibility that shouldn't exist. C3 plants from forests, C4 plants from grasslands, all in the same population. These teeth were passports to anywhere, visas for every ecology. While specialized feeders went extinct when their foods disappeared, Ardipithecus teeth could process anything. The teeth revolution was about choice. Choose cooperation over competition. Choose flexibility over specialization. Choose processing over power. Every choice carved into enamel and dentine. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors bit into a new way of being, and they never looked back. 4:47 a.m. The darkness hasn't broken, but something has changed. The insects have gone quiet, the birds haven't started. In that perfect silence that means death is moving. 30 hearts begin racing in synchronized terror. Dawn is coming, and with it, the daily lottery of who gets eaten. Ardipithecus ramidus didn't wake to alarm clocks. They woke to stay off the breakfast menu. The hour before dawn was peak hunting time for every predator that mattered. Leopards making final stalks, hyenas returning to dens, saber-toothed cats positioning for morning ambush. Our ancestors woke in the kill zone. The statistics are sobering. Based on fossil evidence, 6% of early hominins died from predation. That's 1 in 17. In a band of 30, 2 would be killed and eaten. Not might be, would be. It was mathematical certainty. The only question was who and when. Dr. Robert Sussman studied modern primate predation and concluded early hominins weren't hunters. They were the hunted. Every day was about not becoming meat. The morning routine was choreographed survival. First movement, visual scan from sleeping trees. Second, acoustic assessment. What's making noise? What's gone quiet? Third, olfactory check. Predator scent carries far in still morning air. Only after triple confirmation of relative safety would descent begin. But here's what's remarkable. They didn't huddle in terror. They developed the world's first early warning system. Sentinel behavior. Someone always watching while others prepared for the day. Acoustic signals that specified threat type and direction. Deception calls that sent predators toward empty forest, while the group escaped elsewhere. The descent from sleeping trees was terrifying geometry. Too fast risked falling. Too slow meant exposure. The most vulnerable, mothers with infants, elderly, injured, went in the middle. The most expendable, young males, took point and rear guard. Evolution had choreographed the evacuation order. Ground contact triggered immediate formation changes, spread enough to avoid mass casualty from single attack, close enough for mutual support. Children in the center, adults facing outward, moving like a single organism with 30 pairs of eyes. The morning trek to water was Russian roulette. Predators knew the water routes, but dehydration was as deadly as teeth. So they developed time shifting, varying their water visits, never establishing patterns predators could anticipate. Random was survival. Predictable was death. Here's what saved them. Collective vigilance. One pair of eyes covers maybe 120 degrees. 30 pairs cover everything. When modern researchers test vigilance in groups, they find exponential improvement. A group of 4 has 16 times better predator detection than an individual. A group of 30? Essentially omniscient. But dawn meant more than just survival. It meant opportunity. Predators making kills meant carcasses to scavenge. Nocturnal creatures returning to dens meant briefly vacant territories. The hunted became opportunists, turning their predators' schedules into feeding opportunities. The morning inspection of night's casualties was grim routine. Missing members, blood trails, sometimes remains. The group would investigate, learn, remember. Every death taught lessons. That tree wasn't safe. That route was compromised. That predator was getting bolder. 4.7 million years ago, dawn wasn't beautiful. It was terrifying. But our ancestors turned terror into intelligence, fear into strategy, vulnerability into vigilance. Every sunrise they survived was a victory against odds that would break modern humans. Dawn of the hunted, dusk of the triumphant. One more day, not being breakfast. Staying alive when everything wants to eat you is an art form. Ardipithecus ramidus turned not being eaten into science, strategy, and sheer stubborn brilliance. They wrote the book on survival. Chapter 1. Everything is trying to kill you. Chapter 2. Don't let it. The predator list was a nightmare roster. Dinophelus, the false saber-tooth, specialized in hunting primates. Its fossils concentrate around hominin sites because we were its favorite food. Crocodilus thorbjarnarsoni, with skulls over 5 feet long, could gallop on land. Agriotherium, the giant bear dog, combined a bear's strength with a dog's speed. African crowned eagles could carry off children. Even small predators like jackals hunted in coordinated packs. But our ancestors discovered the ultimate anti-predator weapon: confusion. Dr. Lynn Isbell's research revealed something stunning. Primates that evolved with venomous snakes developed better vision. Those that evolved with diverse predators developed better cognition. Early hominins evolved with everything trying to kill them. They developed genius. The confusion strategy was brilliant. Never sleep in the same trees twice. Never use the same paths. Never establish patterns. Predators are habit machines. They stake out regular prey routes. By being randomly random, our ancestors broke the predator algorithm. They also weaponized weakness. Injured individuals didn't hide. They performed exaggerated limps in safe areas, drawing predator attention while healthy members foraged elsewhere. Mothers with infants made obvious noise in one direction while the group moved opposite. They turned vulnerability into misdirection. The acoustic arsenal was sophisticated, not just alarm calls, but false alarms. Leopard calls when there was no leopard, sending actual leopards investigating non-existent rivals. Snake alarms that made birds mob empty ground, revealing real snake locations through bird behavior. They were hacking the entire ecosystem's communication network. Physical defenses were desperately creative. Thorn branches dragged to sleeping sites, natural barbed wire, stones thrown not to hit but to create noise distractions, feces rubbed on bodies to mask scent, mud coating to confuse thermal detection. They were prehistoric special forces using everything as weapons, but the masterpiece was psychological warfare. They studied predator personalities. That leopard favors left approaches. This crocodile is patient. That eagle hunts at specific angles. They built behavioral profiles of individual predators, predicting their moves like chess grandmasters. The group defense was revolutionary. When threatened, they didn't scatter like other prey. They coordinated. Adults formed walls. Adolescents threw projectiles. Children screamed specific pitches that annoyed predator hearing. Even babies contributed. Their cries triggered aggressive protection responses in adults. Time manipulation was crucial. Most predators are crepuscular, hunting at dawn and dusk. So Ardipithecus shifted active periods to midday and midnight. They suffered heat and darkness to avoid peak predation. They were time hackers, stealing hours when predators least expected activity. The landscape reading was PhD-level ecology. They knew which trees interconnected for escape routes, which rocks could shelter a child, which mud was too deep for heavy predators. They turned terrain into tools, using geography as defensive architecture. Perhaps most brilliantly, they turned predators against each other, leading pursuing leopards toward crocodile territory, making noise that attracted hyenas to lion kills, starting conflicts between competing predators while escaping during the chaos. Not being eaten required constant innovation, perfect teamwork, and acceptance that today's successful strategy was tomorrow's death trap. They didn't just avoid predation, they turned it into selection pressure for intelligence. 4.7 million years ago, everything tried to eat our ancestors. Our ancestors said no. With style. Here's the ultimate Paleolithic paradox. Every calorie you needed to survive required risking becoming calories for something else. Finding food wasn't just foraging, it was a daily dance between starvation and predation. Our ancestors had to eat without being eaten. The menu 4.7 million years ago was diverse but deadly. Fruits hung in trees where leopards lounged. Tubers grew in soil where snakes hunted. Insects hid under bark where spiders struck. Every food source was also a killing field. Grocery shopping could literally kill you. Dr. Richard Wrangham's research reveals the brutal math. Early hominins needed about 1,800 calories daily, but acquiring those calories exposed them to predators for 6 to 8 hours. Every meal was a calculated risk. Ardipithecus developed foraging strategies that would impress military tacticians. Never feed alone. Isolation meant death. Never focus completely on food. Distraction meant death. Never deplete a source. Predictability meant death. They turned gathering into guerrilla warfare. The formation was sophisticated. Core foragers in the center actually collecting food. Sentinels in trees watching for threats. Scouts ahead checking new areas. Decoys making noise elsewhere. It was a prehistoric SEAL team where the mission was lunch. Seasonal knowledge was encyclopedic, not just when fruits ripened, but when they were perfect. Too early meant toxins, too late meant competition. They tracked dozens of species across thousands of acres, maintaining mental maps that would challenge GPS systems. Every individual was a walking botanical database. But here's the genius. They learned to follow, but not compete with other species. Baboons located water. Birds revealed fruit. Elephants opened tough pods. Our ancestors were ecological parasites, exploiting others' efforts while avoiding direct competition. Why fight when you can follow? The underground economy was revolutionary. While other primates focused on visible foods, Ardipithecus discovered buried treasure. Tubers, roots, bulbs, foods that required knowledge and tools to extract. It was prehistoric fracking, accessing calories others couldn't reach. Insect harvesting was protein goldmine. Termite mounds provided predictable protein. Ant colonies offered seasonal bounty. Grubs in rotting logs meant fat reserves. But each required specific techniques, timing, and tools. They were entomologists before science existed. The fallback food strategy saved lives. When preferred foods failed, they had hierarchy of alternatives. Bitter leaves that required processing, seeds needing grinding, bark that could sustain but not nourish. They were culinary survivalists, making inedible edible through desperation innovation. Risk distribution was mathematical. Send strongest to dangerous fruit trees. Keep vulnerable near safe tubers. Rotate exposure so no individual faced constant danger. They were unconsciously calculating probability matrices that would challenge actuaries. Food sharing wasn't charity. It was insurance. Feed others today because tomorrow you might find nothing. The fossil record shows no evidence of starvation in some, while others feast. Everyone ate, or no one did. It was socialism born from survival necessity. The processing revolution extended consumption, crushing nuts between stones, grinding seeds into paste, fermenting fruits for preservation. They were adding value to raw materials, extracting more calories from same resources. Prehistoric food engineering. Perhaps most remarkably, they turned dietary flexibility into evolutionary advantage. While specialized feeders went extinct when foods disappeared, Ardipithecus could eat anything. Their digestive systems were Swiss Army knives, processing whatever kept them alive. Finding food without dying required perfect integration of knowledge, cooperation, and courage. Every successful meal was a victory against an environment designed to starve or slaughter you. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors were hungry, but they were smart. And smart beats hungry, eventually. Water. You need it every 48 hours or you die, but 4.7 million years ago, every water source was where death waited. Rivers meant crocodiles, lakes meant hippos, springs meant ambush sites. Even morning dew could kill you if you licked it from the wrong leaf. Water wasn't life. It was Russian roulette, where staying hydrated meant risking everything. The fossil record around ancient water sources tells horror stories. Hominin bones with crocodile puncture marks, skulls crushed by hippo jaws, group death sites where entire bands were ambushed while drinking. Water holes were prehistoric killing fields where thirst drove prey into predator jaws. Dr. Rick Potts, studying Olduvai Gorge, found something chilling. Hominin fossils concentrated paleo water sources, but so do carnivore fossils. These weren't peaceful oases. They were gladiator arenas where only the smartest survived. Ardipithecus developed water strategies that Navy SEALs would admire. First rule, never drink where you drank yesterday. Predators learn routines. Second rule, never all drink at once. Someone watches, someone drinks, someone scouts ahead. Third rule, time shift everything. Dawn, too dangerous. Dusk, death sentence. Midday heat. Sometimes that was the only safe option. The approach to water was choreographed paranoia. Send juveniles to high ground for observation. Adults spread in semicircle facing outward. Fastest runners positioned for escape routes. Children and elderly in protected center. Movement to water's edge in waves. Never committing everyone at once. But here's the innovation. They learned to read water politics. Which crocodiles were territorial versus nomadic. Which hippo pools were nursing sites, avoid at all costs, versus bachelor pads, slightly less deadly. They built behavioral maps of individual predators, knowing that the big croc hunted Tuesdays but sunbathed Thursdays. Acoustic intelligence was crucial. The silence that meant hidden predator. The bird calls that indicated safety. The insect patterns revealing recent disturbance. They were reading nature's security reports, interpreting environmental intelligence that modern humans can't even perceive. They discovered water alternatives others missed. Dew collection from leaves, risky but sometimes safer than open water. Rain pools in tree hollows, temporary but predator-free. Underground springs accessed through narrow openings, defensible positions. They were water engineers, finding H2O where others saw only danger. The carrying revolution changed everything, using large leaves as temporary vessels, animal bladders as portable containers, hollow gourds as water storage. They were liberating themselves from geographical water dependence, carrying lifelines that meant they didn't need daily waterhole roulette. Seasonal patterns became survival maps. Wet season meant dispersed water, lower predator concentration, safer drinking. Dry season meant concentrated death zones where everything converged on shrinking pools. They learned to stockpile during safe seasons, preparing for dangerous droughts. The social dynamics around water were complex. Who drinks first? The thirstiest or the most valuable? How long do you wait for missing members at water rendezvous? When do you abandon contaminated sources? Every decision had life or death consequences. Chemical detections saved lives. They learned which water carried disease by smell, taste, and color. Sulfur meant volcanic contamination. Algae meant toxins. Clear didn't mean clean. They were prehistoric water quality inspectors, using senses we've forgotten we have. Perhaps most remarkably, they turned water scarcity into social bonds, sharing water source knowledge with other bands, creating reciprocal agreements for drought seasons, building networks where water information meant mutual survival. Water shaped everything, where they slept, how they moved, when they traveled. Every decision revolved around hydration versus predation. It was the daily gamble where winning meant living another day, and losing meant becoming crocodile calories. 4.7 million years ago, every sip could be your last. But our ancestors were thirsty and clever, and they figured out how to drink without drowning in their own blood. That's evolution under pressure. Darkness fell like a death sentence. No fire to ward off shadows. No weapons beyond grabbed branches. No walls except what nature provided. For Ardipithecus ramidus, every nightfall was psychological torture that modern horror movies can't touch. The night didn't just hide predators, it belonged to them. The trees were everything, not shelter, sanctuaries. The difference between waking up and being dragged into darkness by something with night vision and very sharp teeth. But even trees weren't safe. Leopards climb, snakes climb, even lions could reach lower branches. Safety was relative, measured in degrees of probably won't die. Dr. Charles Nunn, studying primate sleep, discovered something terrifying. Early hominins probably slept only 4 to 5 hours nightly in short bursts. Deep sleep meant death. They existed in chronic sleep deprivation that we'd consider torture. The sleeping arrangement was strategic architecture. Strongest adults took outer positions, first line of defense. Mothers with infants in center, maximum protection. Adolescents distributed throughout. Early warning system, everyone touching someone. Movement meant immediate alert. It was a living security system where your body was someone else's alarm. But here's what's remarkable. They learned to weaponize darkness, throwing rocks into night to trigger predator responses, revealing positions, creating false sleep sites with arranged branches while actually sleeping elsewhere, using darkness that terrified them as cover for their own deceptions. The acoustic night world was their internet. Every sound meant something. Leopard coughs were GPS, tracking predator movement through darkness. Hyena whoops were distance calculators. How far and how many? Insect silence was proximity alert. Something big just moved close. They were reading darkness through sound, building mental maps of invisible dangers. Tree selection was life or death, real estate. Too thick meant no escape routes. Too thin meant no support. Perfect trees had multiple exit paths, interconnecting branches to neighbors, height beyond ground predator reach, but below climbing predator comfort zones. They were prehistoric architects, designing with survival specs. The evening ascent was choreographed terror. Who climbs first? The vulnerable who need time, or the strong who can defend? How do you carry infants up? Trunks. What if someone falls? Every nightfall was an evacuation where failure meant becoming midnight snack. Sleep cycles were revolutionary. Unlike deep sleeping apes, they developed sentinel sleep. Someone always semi-conscious, rotating watch without formal assignment, just biological rhythms ensuring group vigilance. They were running security shifts before consciousness could even conceive of schedules. Night sounds were their television, stories told in darkness to maintain wakefulness, soft vocalizations confirming everyone's presence, rhythmic breathing that meant safety, the disruption of pattern that triggered instant alertness. They turned darkness into communication medium. Urination and defecation were deadly logistics. Descending meant exposure. Holding it meant discomfort, affecting alertness. They developed specific branches for waste, disgusting but safer than ground trips. They were managing biological needs under death threat. The morning count was grim routine. Everyone there, anyone injured. Blood trails suggesting taken members. The night's survival wasn't celebrated. It was assessed for lessons. That position was compromised. That tree was insufficient. That sound preceded attack. But perhaps most remarkably, they turned night terrors into evolutionary pressure for intelligence. Darkness demanded enhanced hearing, smell, and touch. Fear drove social bonding. Vulnerability created cooperation. The night that terrorized them also made them human. Every sunset, they climbed into darkness knowing statistical probability meant someone, somewhere, wouldn't see sunrise. Every dawn was a small victory against a night designed to kill them. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors didn't sleep. They survived until morning. There's a difference, and that difference made us. Before marriage, before love, before any human conceived of till death do us part, Ardipithecus ramidus invented something that would define humanity forever. The family unit, not the chest-thumping harems of gorillas or the free-for-all chaos of bonobos. Real families, mom, dad, kids, and the revolutionary idea that everyone mattered. Dr. Owen Lovejoy's analysis of Ardipithecus revealed the smoking gun. Males and females were nearly the same size. This only happens when males stop competing for multiple mates and start investing in offspring. These were the world's first nuclear families. Think about what this meant. A male Ardipithecus chose one female and her offspring over the traditional primate strategy of mate and leave. He was gambling his entire genetic future on quality over quantity. In a world where infant mortality hit 50%, this was either insanity or genius. Genius won. The archaeological evidence is beautiful. Fossil sites show adults and juveniles together, not segregated by sex like other apes. Male and female footprints side by side. Death sites where adults clearly died protecting young, not just mothers, but fathers too. These weren't breeding groups. They were families. But here's what's revolutionary. Paternal certainty. In most primates, males have no idea which offspring are theirs, so they don't invest. Why risk your life for maybe not your kid? But pair bonding created reasonable certainty. That infant the female carried, probably yours if you've been together. Suddenly, male investment made evolutionary sense. The division of labor was already emerging. Males with their slightly larger bodies took on higher risk foraging. Females, managing infants, focused on predictable resources, not rigid roles. The fossil record shows flexibility, but tendencies that maximized offspring survival. Extended childhood changed everything. Ardipithecus young remained dependent longer than any ape. This meant overlapping offspring. Mom nursing newborn while dad helped feed toddler. The family became an economic unit, not just biological. Everyone contributed, everyone benefited. Grandmothers entered the picture. Post-reproductive females who should be evolutionary dead ends became secret weapons. They knew which plants were medicinal, where water stayed fresh longest, how to process toxic foods. The family became multi-generational, knowledge passing through bloodlines. Conflict resolution evolved from violence to negotiation. Can't beat your mate to death, you need them for child rearing. Can't abandon the group. You'll die alone. Families forced cooperation techniques that would become human culture. The pair bond wasn't ownership, but partnership. Fossil evidence suggests females retained autonomy, choosing mates rather than being claimed. Males who provided poorly were replaced. The family was conditional on contribution, not force. This family structure created feedback loops. Cooperative males had more surviving offspring. Choosy females selected better providers. Offspring raised by two parents developed better. Each generation got slightly better at being families. 4.7 million years ago, Ardipithecus invented something that no amount of strength or speed could match: the power of two parents working together. The first families weren't perfect, but they were perfectly revolutionary. And every human family since, dysfunctional or divine, owes its existence to their brave experimenting cooperation over competition. Imagine trying to raise a toddler when literally everything wants to eat them. No cribs, no baby gates, no pediatricians. Just you, a helpless infant, and a world where a moment's inattention meant your genetic line ended in something's stomach. Welcome to parenting, Ardipithecus style. The numbers were brutal. Infant mortality approached 50%. Half of all babies born never saw adulthood. Not from neglect, from mathematics. When leopards hunt your playground and your nursery is wherever you didn't die today. Keeping offspring alive required miracles, daily miracles. Dr. Sarah Hurdy, studying maternal investment, discovered something profound. Early hominin mothers faced an impossible equation. Infants born increasingly helpless needed intensive care, but mothers needed to forage to survive. The solution revolutionized human evolution. The solution was cooperative breeding, alloparenting before science had words for it. Every adult was everyone's parent. Your baby's screaming. 3 adults respond. Mother foraging, and carries infant. Father hunting, grandfather watches toddler. The village raising children wasn't metaphor, it was mandatory. Carrying infants was biomechanical nightmare. No fur to grip like other primates. No slings or wraps yet invented. Just arms already needed for climbing, foraging, and defense. Mothers developed extraordinary upper body strength, carrying 20-pound infants one-armed while gathering food with the other. The extended childhood was evolutionary gamble. Chimp babies are independent at 3. Ardipithecus children needed care until 5 or 6. That's 3 extra years of vulnerability, resource drain, and predation risk. But those extra years meant extra learning, extra brain development, extra human potential. Night was worst, keeping infants quiet in trees while predators prowled below. A crying baby was dinner bell for everything with teeth. Parents developed incredible techniques: constant physical contact, immediate nursing, rhythmic movement. They were sleep training for survival, not convenience. Weaning was calculated risk. Too early meant malnutrition. Too late meant delayed next pregnancy in a world where reproductive windows were narrow. The fossil record shows weaning around age 3, later than apes, earlier than modern humans. The sweet spot for survival. Teaching survival started immediately. Infants carried during foraging learned plant identification through observation. Toddlers practiced alarm calls. Children as young as 4 contributed to group defense by throwing stones. Childhood was apprenticeship where graduation meant not dying. The psychological pressure on parents was crushing. Every decision, where to forage, when to move, which tree to sleep in, affected offspring survival. One wrong choice meant your bloodline ended. They were making life or death decisions with Stone Age information. Disease and parasites were invisible killers. No antibiotics, no understanding of germs, just watching children waste away from things you couldn't see or fight. The helplessness must have been devastating. Yet they developed primitive medicine, specific plants for specific symptoms, learned through deadly trial and error. Protection required constant vigilance. Not helicopter parenting, survival parenting. Every adult tracked every child peripherally. The fossil record shows adults who died in defensive positions around juveniles. They literally formed human shields against predation. But here's what's remarkable. They didn't just keep children alive. They helped them thrive. Evidence of play, of learning, of childhood joy despite the terror. They created pockets of safety in a hostile world. Raising children in hell forged the human capacity for hope, sacrifice, and love under impossible conditions. Every parent since owes them gratitude. They figured out how to nurture in a nightmare. Private property, personal space, mine. These concepts would have killed Ardipithecus ramidus in about 3 days. 4.7 million years ago, sharing wasn't virtue, it was victory. The choice was simple. Share everything or lose everything, starting with your life. The fossil record reveals something extraordinary. No evidence of resource hoarding. No rich burials versus poor ones. No skeletal evidence of some eating while others starved. Everyone ate, or everyone hungered. It was socialism by necessity, communism by survival imperative. Dr. Michael Tomasello, studying cooperation evolution, discovered humans are the only apes that share food with non-relatives. This began with early hominins who realized that feeding others today meant being fed tomorrow. The math of sharing was elegant. You find tubers today, I find none. You share, I survive. Tomorrow I find fruit, you find nothing. I share, you survive. Next week we both find food. We both share with someone who found nothing. The group survives. Multiply this by thousands of days, and sharing becomes the only strategy that works. But sharing went beyond food. Information was currency. Where leopards hunted yesterday, which water source dried up, where fruit would ripen next week. Hoarding information meant group members died, weakening everyone's survival chances. They were open source before Silicon Valley existed. Tool sharing was revolutionary. That perfect hammerstone, passed around the group, that sharp flake, used by whoever needed it. Personal tools didn't exist because personal didn't exist. Everything was communal because community was everything. The sharing of risk was genius. Not everyone foraged in dangerous areas simultaneously. Groups rotated exposure. Strong individuals took greater risks. Vulnerable members stayed safer. Risk was distributed statistically, maximizing group survival while minimizing individual exposure. Childcare sharing changed everything. Mothers could forage efficiently, knowing others watched offspring. Males could hunt, knowing families were protected. Elderly could contribute knowledge, while others provided food. Everyone gave what they could, took what they needed. The sharing of sleeping spaces seems minor, but was massive. Body heat in cold nights, protection through numbers, comfort through contact. They discovered that physical closeness created psychological bonds that enhanced cooperation. Cuddle puddles weren't just warmth, they were team building. Knowledge sharing accelerated evolution. One individual's discovery became everyone's advantage. New tool technique, taught to all. Better predator avoidance, demonstrated immediately. Medicinal plant discovered. Information spread throughout group. They were crowdsourcing survival solutions. Even injuries were shared burdens. Fossil evidence shows individuals with disabilities who lived years requiring care. Broken legs that healed with support. Missing teeth requiring processed food. The group absorbed individual weakness, converting liability into loyalty. The sharing economy extended between groups. Seasonal gatherings where bands exchange resources, genes, and information. Networks of reciprocity spanning territories. Your group feeds mine during our drought. We feed yours during your famine. But here's the kicker. Sharing created equality that prevented conflict. No alpha holding resources meant no reason for revolution. No wealth disparity meant no class warfare. They accidentally discovered that economic equality equals social stability. The tragedy of the commons never occurred because there were no commons. Everything was personal because everything was everyone's. Your loss was my loss. My gain was your gain. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors discovered that the best way to have enough was to ensure everyone had enough. Sharing wasn't charity, it was strategy. And it worked for millions of years until we invented ownership and wondered why society got complicated. They couldn't speak, no vocal cords capable of complex speech, no Broca's area for language processing. But Ardipithecus ramidus was having conversations that would make modern humans jealous. They invented communication so rich that words would have been redundant. Dr. Michael Corballis, studying gesture evolution, discovered something stunning. Language didn't begin with speech. It began with hands, faces, and bodies. Early hominins were fluent in communication that required no sound. The eyes had it. Literally, those forward-facing eyes with visible sclera, eye whites, were communication revolution. Apes have dark sclera, hiding gaze direction, but Ardipithecus could point with their eyes. A glance toward danger, a look at food, an eye roll at stupidity. Probably. They were texting with retinas. Hand gestures were vocabulary. Not random pointing, but specific movements meaning specific things. Flat hand pushing down meant stay low. Fingers walking meant move quietly. Closed fist meant danger close. They had sign language before signs, grammar before words. Facial expressions were sentences. The fossil record shows facial muscle attachment points, allowing more expressions than other apes. A raised eyebrow wasn't just surprise, it was question. A lip curl wasn't just disgust, it was warning. They were having entire conversations with their faces. Body positioning was syntax. How you stood relative to others conveyed relationship, intention, emotion. Squared shoulders meant confrontation. Exposed neck meant submission. Back turned meant trust. They were writing paragraphs with posture. Touch was punctuation. A gentle contact meant comfort. A firm grip meant urgency. A specific touch pattern could convey complex information. Tap, tap, tap meant one thing. Tap, tap, pause. Tap meant another. They were coding messages in contact. The rhythm communication was genius. Walking patterns that conveyed mood. Breathing rates that signaled stress. Heartbeats felt through close contact revealing fear or calm. They were broadcasting biological Wi-Fi signals. Chemical communication flew under consciousness. Pheromones indicating fertility, fear, sickness, or aggression. They couldn't control it, but they could read it, knowing who was stressed, who was sick, who was ready to mate. All through smell. They were having conversations their conscious minds didn't even know about. Vocal communication existed but was limited, not words but tones. A specific grunt for food here, a particular whistle for all clear, a certain hum for comfort baby. They were creating proto-words from pure sound. The synchronized communication was beautiful. Groups moving together without verbal coordination, hunting parties operating in silence, foraging groups spreading and converging through pure gesture. They were dancing survival, choreographing existence. Teaching without words required genius. Watch me, copy me, let me adjust you. Knowledge transferred through demonstration, repetition, and physical correction. They were uploading information through embodied practice. Emotional communication transcended species. They could read prey, animals' fear, predators' hunting intent, even weather patterns through environmental cues. They were listening to nature's language and responding fluently. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of meaning, intention, communication. They were having rich exchanges in frequencies we've forgotten exist. Modern humans with our word obesity might be less communicative than our silent ancestors. 4.7 million years ago, before the first word was spoken, complete conversations were happening. Language didn't begin with speech. It began with the desperate need to share meaning in a world where understanding meant survival. Words were just the latest update to an operating system millions of years old. The ultimatum was simple: work together or die alone. No negotiation, no alternatives, no participation trophies. 4.7 million years ago, natural selection ran the cruelest experiment imaginable. It made cooperation mandatory for the least cooperative primates on Earth. Think about the starting point. Primates are selfish jerks. Chimps murder rivals. Gorillas maintain harems through violence. Orangutans live alone. Then comes Ardipithecus, weak and defenseless, told by evolution, cooperate perfectly or go extinct. It's like asking cats to synchronize swim. Dr. Brian Hare, studying cooperation evolution, calls it survival of the friendliest. But friendliness understates it. This was survival of the radically, desperately, innovatively cooperative. The evidence is everywhere. Synchronized footprints in volcanic ash, groups moving as one unit. Mass kill sites where coordination brought down prey no individual could touch. Defensive formations preserved in death. Adults circled around children, facing outward. They weren't just cooperating, they were choreographing survival. The prisoner's dilemma was daily reality. Share food today when you have excess, or hoard and eat alone. Trust others to watch your infant, or never forage efficiently. Join group defense against predators, or hide and hope others handle it. Every choice between selfish and social had life or death consequences. But here's the genius. They rigged the game. Made cooperation so beneficial that selfishness became suicide. Lone individuals couldn't spot predators from all angles. Death. Couldn't hunt large prey. Starvation. Couldn't raise offspring alone. Genetic death. Cooperation wasn't nice. It was necessary. The free rider problem should have killed cooperation. Why risk yourself if others will protect you? Why share if others will feed you? But they solved it through reputation. In groups of 30, everyone knew everyone. Selfish individuals were remembered, excluded, abandoned. Your reputation was your lifeline. Reciprocal altruism emerged from raw necessity. Not, I'll help you because it's right, but I'll help you because tomorrow I'll need help. Every cooperative act was investment in future survival. They were banking karma before banks or karma existed. Division of labor maximized efficiency. Not everyone did everything. Some excelled at tracking, others at plant identification, some at tool making, others at childcare. Specialization only works with cooperation. Your specialty is useless if others don't share theirs. Collective intelligence emerged from individual limitations. One person remembering all water sources. Impossible. 30 people each remembering some. Complete coverage. One person watching for all predators. Exhausting. 30 people watching together. Comprehensive surveillance. Conflict resolution without violence became mandatory. Can't kill group members. You need them. Can't exile them. You'll weaken defenses. Had to develop compromise, negotiation, reconciliation. They were inventing diplomacy because democracy of survival demanded it. The cooperation cascaded through generations. Children raised cooperatively learned cooperation. Seeing adults share, they shared. Watching group defense, they defended. Cooperation became culture, transmitted automatically. Intergroup cooperation expanded survival networks. Your band helped mine during drought. We help yours during famine. Cooperation scaled from individuals to families to bands to regional networks. They were building civilization's foundation without knowing civilization was possible. The fossil record shows what happened to non-cooperators. They died. No gradually declining populations, no slow extinction. Just sudden absence. Cooperate or vanish. Natural selection's final offer. 4.7 million years ago, evolution presented the ultimate test. Can the most selfish order of mammals learn to be selfless? The answer surrounds you. Every human institution, from marriages to militaries, exists because our ancestors passed that test. Cooperation or death? They chose cooperation. And death had to wait. Innovation wasn't luxury. It was lifeline. Every new idea, every tiny improvement, every creative solution meant the difference between your lineage continuing or becoming fossil record. Ardipithecus ramidus were innovation machines, not because they were creative, but because creativity was compulsory. The innovations seem simple now. Throwing rocks for defense, using thorns as weapons, carrying water and leaves. But 4.7 million years ago, these were revolutionary technologies that required imaginative leaps that would have won Nobel Prizes if they gave them for not dying. Dr. Stanley Ambrose studying human innovation notes. Early hominins showed more technological diversity in tool use than any living ape, not because they were smarter, but because they faced more problems requiring solutions. The defensive innovations were desperate genius. Thorn branches dragged to sleeping sites, natural barbed wire, noisemakers from hollow gourds, predator deterrents, false trails to confuse trackers. They were MacGyvering survival from whatever wouldn't kill them. Food processing innovations doubled available calories, crushing nuts between stones, accessing fats others couldn't, grinding seeds into paste, making indigestible digestible, soaking toxins from roots, turning poison into food. They were chemical engineers without chemistry. The carrying revolution changed everything. Large leaves as temporary containers, animal bladders for water storage, woven grass baskets for food transport. They were defeating geography's tyranny, making resources portable. Location independence before digital nomads existed. Time-shifting innovations broke predator patterns. Foraging at unusual hours, random schedule variations, seasonal behavior shifts. They were hacking predator algorithms, becoming unpredictable and therefore uncatchable. Social innovations multiplied survival odds. Sentinel behavior, synchronized watching, deception calls, misleading predators. Formation movement, group protection. They were inventing military tactics before militaries existed. The information innovations were revolutionary. Trail markers from arranged stones, warning systems using specific calls, teaching through demonstration. They were creating information technology from rocks and sounds. Medical innovations saved lives. Specific plants for specific ailments, wound cleaning with certain leaves, bone-setting techniques. They were practicing medicine before understanding disease. Trial and error, where error meant death. Shelter innovations provided safety, interwoven branches for windbreaks, elevated platforms in trees, hidden caches for resources. They were architects working with nature's materials. The tool innovations seemed primitive, but were revolutionary. Stones selected for specific properties. Edges maintained through careful flaking. Composite tools combining materials. They were engineers before engineering existed. Communication innovations connected groups. Smoke signals for long distance. sound patterns meaning specific things, visual markers for territories. They were building networks before networks existed, but the meta-innovation was innovation itself. The recognition that problems had solutions, that failure taught lessons, that small improvements accumulated into major advantages. They invented the concept of progress. Each innovation built on previous ones. Carrying led to storage. Storage led to surplus. Surplus led to sharing. Sharing led to specialization. Innovation cascaded through culture. Failed innovations littered their path. Tools that didn't work. Strategies that got someone killed. Plants that were actually toxic. But failure was education, and education was evolution. The innovation rate accelerated over time. More problems meant more solutions. More solutions meant more survival. More survival meant more innovators. They were running evolution's first R&D department. 4.7 million years ago, our ancestors faced impossible problems. They innovated impossible solutions. Every human innovation since, from fire to smartphones, follows the pattern they established. Desperate need drives creative solution. Innovation wasn't their choice. It was their only chance. Here's evolution's greatest punchline. The weakest ape became the dominant species, not despite weakness, because of it. Ardipithecus ramidus turned every disadvantage into advantage, every vulnerability into victory. They weaponized weakness in ways that would make Darwin dizzy. No fangs, developed diplomacy. No claws, created tools. No fur, invented clothing. No speed, perfected persistence. No strength, mastered strategy. They were evolution's ultimate underdog story, winning by losing traditional competitions. Dr. David Carrier, studying human evolution, observed, our ancestors' physical weakness forced behavioral innovations that proved more powerful than any physical attribute. Weakness was the selection pressure that created intelligence. The strength disadvantage was staggering. Male chimps are 1.3 times stronger than human males pound for pound, but Ardipithecus males were even weaker. In direct confrontation, they'd lose to basically everything, so they never confronted directly. Weak jaws meant different diets. Couldn't crack bones like hyenas. Couldn't grind tough plants like gorillas. Had to find foods requiring intelligence to access, underground tubers, seasonal fruits, processed seeds. Weakness forced dietary creativity. Small teeth meant no threat displays. Couldn't intimidate rivals with snarls. Had to develop other conflict resolution, negotiation, compromise, reconciliation. Dental weakness created social sophistication. Slow running meant different hunting. Couldn't chase down prey in sprints. Developed persistence hunting, walking prey to exhaustion. Tortoise and hare, where tortoise wins by never stopping. Poor climbing meant ground commitment. Couldn't escape to trees easily. Had to develop ground-based defenses, weapons, formations, strategies. Vertical weakness created horizontal dominance. Weak infants meant extended care. Babies born helpless, requiring years of support, created family bonds, social structures, cultural transmission. Reproductive weakness forged social strength. Physical vulnerability meant social dependency. Couldn't survive alone. Had to build alliances, maintain relationships, create communities. Individual weakness demanded collective strength. The weakness cascade was beautiful. Weak individuals needed groups. Groups needed cooperation. Cooperation needed communication. Communication needed intelligence. Intelligence trumped strength. But here's the genius. They turned weakness into flexibility. Strong species are specialized, locked into specific strategies. Weak species must adapt, improvise, overcome. Weakness meant options. The predation pressure on weak prey created hypervigilance. Better sensory processing, enhanced pattern recognition, predictive capabilities. Weakness sharpened minds that strength would have dulled. Reproductive weakness forced quality over quantity. Couldn't have many offspring like rodents. Had to invest heavily in few. Each child represented massive investment, forcing parental care innovations. Competitive weakness meant avoiding competition. Why fight when you'll lose? Find empty niches. Exploit unused resources. Create, rather than compete. Weakness pioneered entrepreneurship. The weakness actually attracted mates. Non-threatening males got closer to females. Provided rather than dominated. Females chose providers over fighters. Sexual selection for weakness. Evolution's ironic twist. Technological weakness spurred innovation. No biological weapons meant creating artificial ones. No natural defenses meant building them. Every weakness became engineering challenge. The weakness network effect was powerful. Weak individuals helping weak individuals created strong groups. Weakness recognized weakness, fostering empathy, cooperation, mutual aid. 4.7 million years ago, nature's rejects became Earth's architects. Weakness wasn't bug, it was feature. Every human achievement stems from ancestors too weak to win fairly, so they changed the rules. Weakness became strength when strength became liability. Best upset in evolutionary history. Morality wasn't philosophical, it was practical. Every human value we cherish today was born from desperate necessity 4.7 million years ago. Kindness, fairness, loyalty, courage. These weren't virtues, they were survival strategies that worked. Sharing emerged because hoarding meant death. When resources are unpredictable, the only buffer is reciprocity. Share today, survive tomorrow. Generosity wasn't generous, it was insurance. They invented altruism accidentally while trying not to starve. Fairness developed from group dynamics. Unfair resource distribution created conflict. Conflict weakened defense. Weak defense meant predation. Fairness wasn't justice, it was stability. They created equality because inequality was extinction. Loyalty arose from mutual dependence. Abandon group members, lose future support. Betray trust, become outcast. Outcast died, alone. Loyalty wasn't noble, it was necessary. They invented faithfulness from fear of isolation. Courage came from calculation. Sometimes facing danger protected offspring. Sometimes fighting saved group. Courage wasn't brave, it was mathematical. Risk yourself to save 2 relatives, your genes survive. They discovered heroism through genetic algebra. Compassion emerged from child-rearing needs. Infants required empathy to survive, reading needs, anticipating problems, providing comfort. Compassion wasn't soft, it was strategic. They developed kindness because harshness killed babies. Honesty developed from reputation, economics. Lie about danger, people die. Trust vanishes. No trust, no cooperation. No cooperation, no survival. Honesty wasn't moral, it was mandatory. They told truth, because lies were literally deadly. Respect arose from knowledge preservation. Elders held survival information. Disrespect them, lose wisdom. Lose wisdom, repeat fatal mistakes. Respect wasn't courtesy, it was continuity. They honored age because age held answers. Responsibility emerged from group dynamics. Negligence affected everyone. Your mistake could kill others. Others' survival was your survival. Responsibility wasn't mature, it was mutual. They were accountable because accountability kept everyone alive. Sacrifice developed from parental investment. Parents dying for offspring preserved genes. Individuals dying for group preserved culture. Sacrifice wasn't noble, it was evolutionary. They gave lives to give life. Patience came from persistence hunting. Quick gratification meant lost opportunities. Wait for ripeness. Wait for weakness. Wait for advantage. Patience wasn't virtue, it was victory. They learned waiting because rushing meant ruin. Justice emerged from preventing freeloaders. Those who took without giving weakened groups. Punishment prevented parasitism. Justice wasn't fair, it was functional. They created consequences because consequences created cooperation. Humility developed from environmental reality. Nature didn't care about ego. Arrogance meant underestimating danger. Humility wasn't modest, it was smart. They stayed humble because hubris was homicide. Trust arose from vulnerability. Had to trust others with offspring, trust others with safety, trust others with resources. Trust wasn't faith, it was necessity. They trusted because independence was impossible. Hope emerged from survival statistics. Most died, some survived. Focus on possibility, not probability. Hope wasn't optimistic, it was essential. They hoped because despair was death. Love developed from pair bonding. Emotional attachment ensured parental investment. Love for offspring ensured care. Love for group ensured loyalty. Love wasn't romantic, it was practical. They loved because love meant living. Every value modern humans claim as civilized achievement was actually born from uncivilized desperation. 4.7 million years ago, morality wasn't philosophy, it was technology. Behavioral technology that turned desperate apes into successful humans. Values weren't discovered, they were forged in survival's furnace. And they worked. We've gained the world and lost our minds. Modern humans, surrounded by abundance our ancestors couldn't imagine, have forgotten the lessons written in blood and bone over 4.7 million years. We're suffering from evolutionary amnesia, and it's killing us slowly. Ardipithecus knew every group member intimately. We have 500 Facebook friends and feel lonely. They shared everything. We hoard everything and wonder why society fractures. They cooperated for survival. We compete for sport and call it success. Dr. Sebastian Junger, studying modern tribalism, notes, "We've created a society that's antithetical to human evolution. We're psychologically starving in physical abundance." They slept in groups, constant physical contact providing security. We sleep alone in locked boxes, wondering why anxiety skyrockets. They knew danger was external. We've internalized threats that don't exist, creating mental predators worse than any saber-tooth. They walked 5 to 10 miles daily. We sit 10 hours and buy gym memberships. They ate diverse wild foods. We eat processed monocultures and develop allergies to nature. They lived by circadian rhythms. We blast ourselves with blue light and wonder why we can't sleep. Community was mandatory. Now it's optional, and we're opting out. They raise children collectively. We do it alone and burn out. They had 30 people who die for them. We have insurance policies and no one to call at 3 a.m. They knew their purpose, survival and continuation. We have everything and question why we exist. They faced real threats and stayed calm. We face imaginary threats and panic. They had problems with solutions. We have comfort with no meaning. Work meant direct survival. Now we push pixels for currency to buy things we don't need. They built tools they'd use. We build PowerPoints no one reads. They hunted dinner. We hunt parking spaces. They trusted their bodies. We trust devices. They knew their environment intimately. We need GPS to find our own streets. They could identify hundreds of plants. We can't name 5 trees. They read weather patterns. We can't function without weather apps. Conflict resolution was immediate and necessary. Now we ghost, block, cancel. They couldn't afford grudges. We collect them. They forgot quickly because memory was for survival information. We remember every slight while forgetting everything important. They touched constantly, grooming, comforting, connecting. We touch screens. They made eye contact as communication. We avoid it as intrusion. They breathed together in sleep. We breathe alone in anxiety. Risk was real and calculated. Now we avoid all risk and wonder why we feel dead. They faced fear daily and stayed sane. We live in history's safest period and medicate for anxiety. Death was visible, accepted, integrated. We hide it, deny it, break down when it arrives. They grieved together. We grieve alone. They knew life was temporary. We pretend we're permanent. Children learned by doing. Now, they learn by sitting. They contributed early. Now, they're useless until 25. They grew up in reality. Ours grow up online. 4.7 million years of evolution shaped us for small groups, real challenges, and constant connection. 50 years of modernity gave us isolation, artificial problems, and digital substitutes. We're dying of abundance, starving in plenty, alone in crowds. Our ancestors would weep for what we've become, and laugh at what we think matters. You are the culmination of the greatest survival story ever told. Every cell in your body carries the victories of ancestors who faced impossible odds and won. 4.7 million years of trial, error, and triumph flow through your veins. You didn't just inherit genes. You inherited the solutions to every problem that almost ended us. When you feel anxious in crowds, that's your Ardipithecus radar scanning for threats that no longer exist. When you calm holding loved ones, that's ancient wisdom, knowing safety comes from contact. When you share food with friends, you're executing programming older than any culture. Your brain still runs software written in East African rift valleys. That inexplicable fear of rustling bushes saved countless ancestors. That automatic trust of people who share food built communities before language existed. That surge of love for your children ensured your lineage when half of infants died. Dr. E.O. Wilson said, "Human nature is the ensemble of hereditary regularities in mental development that bias cultural evolution in one direction rather than another." You're biased toward cooperation because competition killed our ancestors. You're biased toward fairness because inequality destroyed groups. You're biased toward love because indifference meant extinction. Your hands that text and type evolved to craft survival. Your voice that complains about Wi-Fi evolved to warn of death. Your eyes that stare at screens evolved to read faces, landscapes, danger, opportunity. You're using Formula One equipment for grocery runs. The anxiety you medicate is hypervigilance that kept ancestors alive. The depression you battle might be hibernation instinct for scarce resources. The ADHD you manage could be the scanner personality that detected threats. Your disorders might be superpowers in wrong context. When you exercise, endorphins flood because movement meant survival. When you sing together, oxytocin bonds because harmony meant unity. When you share stories, dopamine rewards because information meant living. Your chemistry assumes you're still in Africa, still vulnerable, still needing your tribe. Your attraction to nature isn't nostalgia, it's necessity. Your need for community isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Your desire for purpose isn't existential, it's evolutionary. You're not broken. You're perfectly designed for a world that no longer exists. But here's the gift. Every challenge Ardipithecus faced, they solved. Impossible odds, they calculated better odds. Unbeatable predators, they became unbeatable cooperators. Hostile environment, they became Earth's most adaptable species. You carry their solutions. When modern life threatens, you have 4.7 million years of problem solving in your bones. When isolation hurts, you have community building in your blood. When future seems impossible, you have impossible victories in your DNA. Your ancestors didn't just survive, they prevailed. Against predators that should have eaten them, against climates that should have killed them, against odds that should have ended them. They won so thoroughly that you exist. Their legacy isn't just survival, it's the tools for thriving. Cooperation when competition fails, innovation when tradition breaks, adaptation when environment changes, love when logic says run. You are their wildest dream, living past 30, reading these words. Safe from predators, free from constant hunger. You are also their greatest experiment. Can the lessons learned in desperation apply to abundance? Can cooperation forged in necessity survive prosperity? Can love developed for survival flourish in safety? 4.7 million years ago, something that shouldn't exist decided to exist anyway. That impossibility became possibility. That possibility became you. Your inheritance isn't just genes, it's the proof that impossible is temporary. That's what Ardipithecus gave you. Now, what will you do with it?